Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening. I hope everyone is well on the session for this evening. Taking a bit of a detour from my newsletter from during the week, Learn, Unlearn, and Relearn. So we're looking at this evening, do you know how to avoid the long-term effects of being gaslighted? So I'm just going to wait for, if you get it on Facebook, I've got a page up there running, and YouTube and LinkedIn. So welcome. If you're here for the first time, welcome. We'll be here for about 25 minutes or so, looking at this whole thing about gaslighting and can you avoid the long-term effects. And some folks may think there's no long-term effects, but remember from the film from 1944, the idea of the abuser was to cause his wife to go insane. So there are some long-term effects, and I'll be saying a little bit about them tonight. So we're looking at the long-term effects. We're looking at also the effects of lying, the impact on us, and then the methods of warfare, because we really are in a battle when it comes to gaslighting. My name is Delroy Hall. I'm a trained psychotherapist with over 30 years experience, teacher, lecturer, and trainer. And I'm just waiting for my person just to give me a heads up tonight on YouTube, and then we're good to go. But we started already anyway, so welcome you. And I'm just realizing now, thank you, I'm just realizing now, some folks have been following me for some time now, and I think I've known that all along. And if you're there, silent listener, taking notes, I hope you're finding it helpful. Thank you very much indeed. If you're new, thank you very much indeed. It should be on Facebook. It should have come up on your page, but if not, still working at it. I don't really know what's happening with Facebook at the moment. But anyway, so we're going to look at three things today: the long-term effects of gaslighting. Okay, long-term effects of gaslighting, methods, the effect of lying, because that's what gaslighting is, on methods of warfare, because we really are in a battle. So the whole thing around gaslighting, if you're new to the idea, let me just say what it is briefly. It's a form of psychological and emotional abuse designed by the abuser or the perpetrator to cause you, the abusee or the gaslightee, to question your reason of sanity. So it's a kind of drip effect that causes you to question your sense of reality, to doubt your own thinking, to doubt who you are as a person. So some of the effects of gaslighting, and some of you who've experienced it will know, feelings of powerlessness and trauma. Sometimes we know something is going on, but we're not too clear what is actually going on. Trauma, anxiety, which can lead to depression. So I'm talking about gaslight in the workplace. The relationships is something entirely different. There's certainly some overlap, but I'm really looking at what happens in the workplace. It started on from my idea of moral injury, then it went on to DARVO, DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. Those of you who are interested, look on my previous newsletters, also my broadcasts. So anxiety, depression. Also, you can imagine if we're begin to question our sanity, there are then high risks of suicidal ideation. I don't know if you've ever, I know when I've been really stressed at times, and I really wonder whether I'm going mad on that. And that's my own doing, because I've not taken enough rest, not had enough sleep. Happened years ago, but that's not been caused by somebody deliberately causing me to question my sense of reality and so forth. So, one thing I'd like to say, that young people who are ordinarily vulnerable, if they're experiencing gaslighting in their vulnerable state, they are at risk of severe mental ill health. So it's really important that certainly if we know that young people are in a particular environment that's not good, that we protect them as much as they can. As we know, social workers can go into areas and take children out of families, causes a whole heap of problems, which we'll not be discussing this evening. But this whole thing about gaslighting, it really, really is serious. So the long term on the victim is possibly mental disorder. And one of the things, of course, mental disorder, it leads to isolation and leading people to feel a low self-esteem. That's really important. But also, the other thing, of course, is doubting one's ability. So you could be a very capable worker, a very capable employee, but how you've been treated and gaslit, as we said last week, what it's about. You say something and it's questioned, and then people don't remember it that way. Are you sure you heard it that way? So you really kind of question, you begin to doubt your own sense of reality, your perception of self. What did I say, the truth or not? And also this whole thing about doubting one's own ability. So also I'd like to say that, believe it or not, migrants are particularly vulnerable to gaslighting. If they're working for a company and the working conditions are not good, they can be told, and they have been told, you have no rights to complain about the working conditions. So migrants are new to the culture, new to the country, new to the language. They don't know the way of working. They're still working it out. And they're told in workplaces where sometimes they're treated badly, you have no rights to complain. You have no rights. That's a form of gaslighting as well. And as we know, in terms of intimate relationships, in fact, in intimate relationships, the abuser might say to their migrant partner, my immigration officers are always on the lookout. They're watching you, your phone calls and so forth, and when in fact they're not. But that can really cause a lot of difficulties for people who are kind of vulnerable already. So one of the things I want to talk about in terms of the long-term effect of gaslighting, and I think this is really important. I want to talk about the effect of lying on one's personhood. Now, that's you, the abusee, the receiver of the lies. But as I looked at this, I'd also want to say to you that the person who continually lies, there is not a good outcome for them either. And I was thinking that, you know what, maybe next week I might do that session on if you're a gaslighter or you're continually lying in your relationships, the impact it has on you. It really is frightening what lying does. Now, you may have heard me say this before, that when I was a boy, my father used to say something to me, and I kind of never fully understood it then as a boy, but I did as I get older. Delroy, if you're going to lie, make sure you have a good memory. One of the things, of course, with lying, you've got to remember what you've said. And that's something I might explore in another session, about this whole thing about lying and so forth. So lying, so there's this idea that most people think lying is wrong until there's a right reason for doing it, in terms of the philosophy of lying and the ethics around lying. Again, we won't look into it this evening, but lying really is a form of deception. But not all forms of deception are lies. So lying is a form of deception. Lying gives someone information knowing that what you're giving is not fully the truth, but the person who's hearing it thinks it's the truth. And your intention is to deceive the individual. Now, one of the things about lying, of course, is that when we know that we're telling fibs, our body reacts to it. There's a physiological response. I believe in the Old Testament, I think it's in Numbers, if there was a case where they weren't able to decide who was telling the truth and who was lying, they were able, according to the story, they were able to mix a concoction of herbs and spices. Both would have to have the drink, and those who lied would die. That was one of the ways when in fact they couldn't discern or decide who was telling the truth or not. Now we know from science and so forth that when we tell porkies, that there's a physiological response in our bodies. So we know that something's going on. We know that what we're doing is incorrect, but we perhaps still do it anyway. So more can be said about lying, but I'm interested in the long-term damage of the individual who's in the kind of, who's receiving these lies. Focus on the victim. Here we go. So the harm that is done with lying, and some of us know already in terms of gaslighting, is deception. And what that leads to, the person who's hearing these lies, they can be deprived of control over their lives. The information that they're receiving, if they make a decision, it's an ill-informed decision, so they can't make the best decision for their lives. So the decision is made on partial truths. I recall a managerial position I was in some years ago. I just happened to mention to somebody that I just started and the head of the organization was calling me often to find out information. And I said, I found this really bizarre. And the person said to me, well, I've sat around the exec table, and what I've noticed that the senior managers would only tell him partial information, the partial truth. So when he came to make a decision, he couldn't make a proper decision. He'd make them, but he then realized he couldn't make a proper decision because there was some information he wasn't told. It had been deliberately withheld from him. So there's a whole thing around deception. People then can't make decisions about their lives. And also then, if you're being lied to, there's a feeling of being badly treated. And also there's a feeling of being disrespected. As human beings, it doesn't land well if we're disrespected. That's what a form of gaslighting is. You're disrespecting an employee. They are there, they're working, they're diligent, they're doing what they should be doing, really committed to their work, but yet there's a feeling of disrespect. And those of you that are listening, whether live or on catch up, and I want to say greetings to you, if you're being disrespected, you know the damage it can cause to you. There's a friend of mine told me, this was last year, I was meant to meet and we weren't able to meet, and she texted me the following day that she and a partner got into a massive row, and then she said to me, he insulted me. And I knew then that the moment you insult somebody in a relationship, you've crossed a line and there's no coming back. So the minute that people feel disrespected, not just psychological and emotional, but there's a load of physiological responses that takes place in the body when people are disrespected. And if you're an employee and you stay in that place of work and you're disrespected, you may do the work, but you won't be committed to it. I recall one of the persons who contacted me privately some time ago. I think I did a series of courage in the workplace, and he said that he'd been shafted at the workplace, and he said, Delroy, never again. He says, I'll do a good day's work, but I will be never ever loyal to an organization again. I'll do a good day's work. When it's time to go home, and he's a very good worker, he's done really, really well, but he said, I will not be committed or loyal to any organization again because of how I've been treated. So this whole thing around disrespect is really important. If you're being lied to, you then become untrusting, and there's uncertainty about what to do about your life in the future, because in a sense, the basis of our lives is trust. That has been disrupted. The foundation has been disrupted, and you don't know what to do for the best for the future. Now, when we talk about construction, I remember my father, literally 2 days before he died, he was a builder's joiner, and I bought a house, and I was thinking of doing an extension on it. And one of the last things he said to me, Delroy, make sure when you do the extension, make sure the foundation is good. And a lot of money. In fact, I remember at the time he'd passed when I'd actually did the extension, and I remember how much thousands of pounds went into the foundation, which wasn't seen, but it kept the building. As far as I know, the building is still erect today. So when our foundation has been disrupted, we then become untrusting of other people. We then become untrusting of the world. And obviously, then we become untrusting of ourselves. So this whole thing about avoiding the long-term effects of gaslighting, for me, it's really, really serious. Now, the bigger picture, of course, is if you've been lied to over a long period of time, then you start to distrust society. And what happens, this is another conversation for another time. And what happens if there's lying in society, there's a level of the level of truthfulness falls. I don't need to say much about one of our previous governments and the leader who was there, who was notorious for telling stories and lies and spinning the truth and so forth. What happens if lying becomes accepted? It becomes the norm. And I'm pushing this really to the extreme. If lying becomes so normalized and truth becomes minimal, what happens in the most extreme cases, and you'll know, societies collapse and fall. So that's a whole serious thing about the thing about lying. So I'm going to get on to the weapons of warfare in a moment. So please, if you want to ask a question, please do. If you're watching, if you're on YouTube, even outside of that, people do comment. Let me just have a look. Have I got something here? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, please feel to make a comment or ask a question relevant to the topic we are exploring. And people do that, and they certainly contact me outside of the session. And those of you that may be watching on LinkedIn, there's some fascinating conversations going on between this particular subject matter that we're looking at the moment. So good. So in terms of the long-term effects of lying, so I've said some of the impact of lying, and this is some of I say a little bit more, just kind of bullet points. If you want more, I offer a 1 hour free consultation. If you want to do any work in terms of what you're experiencing in your workplace, 1 hour free consultation. And then I never ask individuals, even with clients, I never ask them to make a decision there and then. I don't want to put people on the spot. Some people, of course, say there and then, look, Delroy, yeah, I want to work with you, but I allow people to contact me, text me, email me, call me. Yeah, I'd like to work with you. So there's never any pressure on the spot. So the effects of lying. So you need to be careful in terms of gaslighting. You're in a workplace and you realize you've been gaslit. Now, avoiding it is really, really important. So there's psychological effect on you. So I've spoken already, self-doubt. There's cognitive dissonance in the sense that you're not thinking straight. Did I say that? I wonder whether that person's right. Oh, I'm not even too sure what I said now. So this kind of confusion that's going on is not helpful at all. And you become hypervigilant, meaning that you then become suspicious of everything. And you say things and you're not too sure whether it's accurate. Somebody says something to you and you're not too sure it's accurate. You can't settle. There's a loss of trust, as I said before. There's a mistrust in the person, the organization. Also, worse still is if you start distrusting yourself. That is really, really critical. The emotional damage of gaslighting, long-term gaslighting, emotional damage is insecurity. It creates instability and uncertainty. And society needs certainty and it needs stability. We need a level of certainty and stability. During the pandemic, when there was so much unknown, the levels of anxiety went through the roof. I remember, if I remember rightly, during lockdown, food sales went up by 30%, alcohol sales went up by 35%. People were using alcohol as a way of dealing with the levels of anxiety, uncertainty, what was taking place. Low self-esteem, emotional exhaustion. Can you imagine if you're having to fend off and be thinking about the person who's gaslighting you? It wears you out. So the long-term effect can be emotional exhaustion. And the other thing, of course, somebody contacted me some time ago, and you recall last year that I did a whole series on betrayal. That betrayal, trying to fend it off, trying to protect yourself, there's a lot of emotional wear and tear in the whole thing around gaslighting and lying. There's damage to relationships, broken bonds. Who do you trust? I don't trust you anymore. Don't trust in the employee. Future relationships then are difficult to forge because you've been treated so badly, and now in a sense you're mistrusting everything what everybody says. I don't even want to talk about the mental health effects. You know that already. So spoken about it enough times this evening. Depression, anxiety, PTSD-like symptoms. There's moral and ethical issues as well. That maybe one time you were honest and you did your work well, and now with being exposed to lying, you now compromise your moral and ethical stance. You now start to lie, and so it's terrible. It really, really is. The other thing as well that can happen is behavioral change, linking it to the moral and ethical dilemmas, that you've been lied to. Now you start lying, and in a way of trying to get control of your life. You've been honest, you've been, well, maybe sometimes you might think then naive, you've been honest, you've been open, and now you've been lied to over a period of time, and now you start lying, you become corrupt like the gaslighter. Because your life has gone out of control, and you see the way forward is to keep lying. Self-perception, am I to blame? Your sense of self is diminished, who you are, the inability to trust yourself, and so forth. And also the whole thing around physical well-being, stress-related illnesses, disturbed sleep. So you can see that this whole thing around gaslighting is damaging So what I've got now is, of the next 10 minutes, is I wanted to set the scene, because some folks might say, oh, well, you know, Delroy, it doesn't really matter. It does. It really does matter. And I think one of the things that I will say right from the outset, even if I don't finish it this evening, your health is far more important than a well-paid job with status and kudos. Your health is far more important than a well-paid job with status and kudos. It ain't worth it, mate. It really isn't worth it. Stay in a job which is killing you. So there's two approaches to avoiding long-term effects of gaslighting. And there's two approaches: managing and elimination. Elimination, I guess, is self-explanatory. But what we may do, we may have to manage it because we can't, because maybe, you know, we can't leave. I think I shared with you last week of somebody I knew who was working in a place for quite a few years, couldn't take anymore, left without a job to go to, had children, single mother, but left without a job to go to. She got a job, but she couldn't take it anymore, obviously because her health was beginning to suffer. So one of the things that we need to do when things happen to us, we need to acknowledge what has taken place. There's a quote that I've used again and again by Marion Keyes, an Irish author and broadcaster, and I love the quote. She says, I think there is pressure on people to turn every negative into a positive, but we should be allowed to say, I went through something really strange and awful, and it has altered me forever. We do not come out of gaslighting. We do not come out of moral injury. We do not come out of Darvo unscathed. It changes us for life. I think I might have made mention. I met somebody at the on the train station literally about 6 weeks ago, I think now, and she was in broadcasting and TV, and we got talking, and she asked me what I was doing, and I told her what I was doing, and she said that her husband went through the same thing, and she, as an outsider, knew what was going on, and she could see what was going on, and eventually the thing went to court. He won, and 10 years on, she said to him, she asked him about the incident, and he says, I still think about it quite often. So the effects of it can be with you for a very, very long time. So acknowledge what has happened. It's really, really important. Also, one of the things I've always said, connect with a support group. Do you have friends? Do you have family? People who can trust, people who you trust, people who you know got your back. Even in your vulnerable state, you know they have your back and they understand what's going on. One of the things that you can do to avoid the long-term effects of gaslighting, you set and maintain boundaries. It's really important. So what you need to do, you learn to keep yourself safe. And the minute that you suss this gaslighting behavior taking place, you say clearly, I'm not going to tolerate that behavior. You jam the lever on, you stop it, you assert yourself. And one of the things about asserting yourself, you don't have to be rude, but you're just stating the fact, I am not accepting that behavior. You say clearly, and I would even say to individuals, you look them in the eye. I've had to do that before with my seniors, my elders. I come from a Caribbean community where you're taught to respect your elders. You don't answer them back, all that type of stuff. And I remember on one particular, I did it quite a few times, but I remember on one particular occasion when there was a confrontation between me and a senior, and I looked him straight in the eye, and in a calm voice, I told him what's what. I didn't swear, wasn't rude, but I told him what his game was and looked him straight in the eye as I was saying it. Were my knees knocking together? Hell, they were, but I said it anyway. And it's this whole thing about setting boundaries and being clear what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept. One of the things you can do, you must do, educate yourself on gaslighting and abusive behavior. The great thing about education is that once you know knowledge, now they talk about knowledge is power. That's not quite true. Knowledge applied is power, because we can have lots of knowledge, but we don't do anything with it. It's not changing our lives. We can learn lots of things, but knowledge is power. Knowledge applied knowledge, or knowledge applied, is power. Learn as much as you can about gaslighting. And now with the YouTube and the internet, there's so much we can learn. Arm yourself. You're not short of stuff on YouTube, podcasts. They're great places to learn, get information. If you're like me, I like to be in a room of people, and I can learn off YouTube and podcasts. But I love being in a group of people. We can talk ideas and so forth. But we don't say there's nothing out there. There's loads of stuff out there. I recall meeting somebody recently who's making a living building computers, and I asked him, where did you learn it? Never been to college. He said, I taught myself by watching YouTube videos. There's somebody I know now who runs his own shop selling mobiles and repairing TVs and computers. And I said, which college did you go to? Never been to college, but I learned as a young boy, starting to unpack and break telephones and look what was in them, and all the rest, and the rest is history. So there's lots of information that we can get. So acknowledge what's happened, connect with a support group, set and maintain boundaries, educate yourself as much as possible, and trust the healing process. When your life has been disrupted by gaslighters, it really does radically. Remember, it's your foundation, and our society, our relationships, in a sense, trust is the oil, trust is the glue that holds society together, but it's the glue that causes relationships to run along smoothly. So trust is so important. It's also the glue and the oil, the glue for social cohesion, community cohesion, family cohesion, and then oil for relationships running smoothly together. So trust the healing process, be patient with yourself. If you learn about gaslighting and the effect it has on you, I've shared a little bit about the impact of lying that it has on you as an individual. You realize then you've gone through some stuff, hence my comment about the methods of warfare, because your humanity has been violated. It may not come across that in the workplace. They may say something different. Well, it's just gaslighting. No, your humanity has been violated. So therefore, you need weapons, armory, knowledge, information, education of warfare that allow you to exist. Now, let me just come back here for a second. Okay, good. So if you cannot fix it, remember I said there was two approaches: management and elimination. Sometimes in workplaces, employers know the difficult individuals. I remember a friend of mine who eventually was off on the sick for nearly 2 years, and she was paid off by the organization 2 years' salary. And she went on to do a course which they paid for, because there was an admission that they were at fault and the person who'd caused the damage was still employed. Sometimes employers know how difficult a person is. They know the gaslighters are, but almost as though they feel that they're not able to do anything whatsoever. And one of the things I saw on a lot of the on the LinkedIn conversations, that when it comes to emotional trauma, emotional damage, that can be quite hard to prove legally if you're looking for legal support. So there are one or two complications around this matter. So that's something to kind of bear in mind. So if you can't fix it, if you can't manage, you've only got one option: is to eliminate it. And if you can't, if the organization is not big enough for you to transfer, to go to another department, go to another part of the city, and so forth, you only have one option: that's to eliminate it. And if you can't leave today, could you leave in 6 months' time, 8 months' time, with an exit plan? And maybe you can't even last that long. And you might say to me, well, Delroy, I've got children, so forth. Yes. Well, what you do, children are good. You bring your family together, explain what's happening, and if the children are young, you explain to them in a way that they understand. So, but don't exclude them. What we do quite often as parents, we exclude children from important family decisions. You have a partner, children, and you may have to make a decision, because you realize if you continue in this workplace, there's no support, you're going to end up unwell. So you decide to leave. You call the family together and say, look, this is going to happen. I may be out of work for a while, but I need to leave now. I recall, let me just give you an example. I recall when I was leaving British Telecom many years ago, 1993. Wife and I went to Abbey National, and it's Abbey National or Lloyds Bank, I can't remember which one. And we asked to see the manager. I think trying to get the manager now is really difficult, but back in the day, 30 odd years ago, we went to see the manager. And he said to us, Mr. and Mrs. Hall, thank you for coming in to see us. We now know that if there's any kind of mispayments or so forth, we now know that it's because you're no longer in full-time employment and you're now in education. He said most people don't tell us of the situation until they receive threatening letters. Had they come and seen us at the beginning, we could have done something for them. And I believe you, I can't remember if this Abbey National or Lloyds Bank, but they were brilliant. I wasn't working for 2 or 3 years because I was at college doing some studies. I think it was 2 years. They were absolutely brilliant. It's having the conversation at the outset. So bring your family together. Say this is going to happen. It might mean we're going to have to pull our belts in for the next few weeks or a few months. Things might be a bit lean. And maybe the next job you get, the money may not be there, but you've had the conversation with the family. And it's amazing. I just say this just popped into my head. When I left British Telecom years ago, I was on, well, I left in 93. I was on 18,500. Then, you know, little money. I got a job as a cleaner. I was doing my psychotherapy training, my teacher training, doing a job as a cleaner up at the crack of dawn, did 3 hours cleaning in offices, toilet blocks, all the rest of it. Oh gosh, yes. And so what happened, money was really scarce. But you know what? We learned how to manage. We bought things cheaply. We made sauces from scratch. It's amazing the amount of things you can do if you're boxed into a corner. You really can do a lot. And it may be good just to teach our children what we need to do when things are really difficult, how we can pull together, we get through this together, and have this open conversation with your partner and children, really helpful for the family. So my name is Delroy Hall. We've just spent about 31 minutes looking at how to avoid the long-term effects of being gaslit. If you want to know more information, I've said right in the middle, I do 1 hour free consultation, and then after that you make a decision. Not there and then, you will contact me whenever to let me know, look, Delroy, I think I can do some work with you, whether it's open-ended, which is rare these days, but you do a block of work. Certainly I do blocks of work with individual, 5 sessions, 10 sessions. We work on one thing to resolution, and then that's the original contract. If you want to extend the contract, that comes from you, it doesn't come from me. But here's my contact details. Let me just have a look. But I'm easy to find anyway. You can get me on through YouTube, you can get me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Messenger, through my website, or through my email. So 1 hour free consultation, and then after that, it's up to you whether you continue working with me or you find somebody else who you're more suitable with. So go well, enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week, and you can avoid the long-term effects of gaslighting. Don't allow it to crush you, and learn as much as you can so that when you're in a position to assert yourself, you can assert yourself and put things in order. Don't be afraid of the gaslighter, even if their employees are. Wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. And yeah, look out for my newsletters. And also every day I send out a quote with a few comments from myself. Please feel to engage with it on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. And really great to see you at some point. So thank you very much indeed. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Good evening, Melissa. Right. Thank you. Kind of snuck in there. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. It's, you know, some people I've never met, but it's just great interacting with them, really. So thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Sonia. And thank you, Safi, my sound engineer. And those of you that listen silently each week and during maybe going through a really difficult time in your work, I'm hoping that these sessions are really helping you. But remember, it's not so much that knowledge is power. Knowledge applied is power. We must apply the knowledge. Otherwise, every Tuesday, all you get is a dopamine hit and nothing changes. All right. Look after yourselves. Enjoy your Tuesday and the rest of the week. And thank you for listening and watching it. Take care. Bye-bye.